This is neocolonialism at its finest, and I don't think African countries are getting it. China is
Actually, I think that the African nations do get it, but you don't really get it. So let's dive into it. This is your favorite half Chinese. So, neocolonialism refers to the indirect mechanism through which powerful nations or entities maintain control, influence, or exploitation over less powerful countries, often former colonies, without formal territorial occupation. Unlike traditional colonialism, which involved direct political and military domination, neocolonialism operates through economic, cultural, political, and institutional means. So we can already see that none of that is what China is actually doing. But let's break it down. Economic dominance, debt dependency, wealthy nations or institutions like IMF, World Bank impose loans with strict conditions, structural adjustment programs, forcing poorer nations to privatize resources, cut social spending, or prioritize export over local needs. None of that is what China is doing. They do loan, but only for projects that will also yield a certain profit. So the project itself will pay back the loan. So there you go. And often it is for zero interest loans or very low interest. And if they cannot pay, many times the loan is just being forgiven or restructured. So there's no such thing as debt dependency when it considers China. Unfair trade agreements. Wealthier nations enforce trade deals that favor their industries, such as subsidizing their own agriculture while demanding developing countries open markets to foreign goods. Also, that is not what China is doing. It is not forcing Africa to open their markets to Chinese goods. In fact, it is quite doing the opposite. Just lately, I'm not sure if it was on the end of last year or beginning this year, that China said, the most poorest nations from Africa can now export to China for zero tariffs. That is great news for the African nations, and it's actually the direct opposite of what you would do when you want to neocolonize the other nation, right? So that is not what they are actually doing. Then we have the resource extraction. Multinational corporations control natural resources, oil, minerals, farmland in developing countries, often repatriating profits while leaving minimal local benefit. And that is also what China is not doing. In certain cases, they are getting resources. That's definitely true, but it's not at the detriment of the people they are actually normally paying for it. So it's just doing business. Political and institutional control, elite puppetry, supporting corrupt or authoritarian leaders who align with foreign interests, ensuring policies benefit external powers rather than local populations. China isn't doing that because China has a non-interference policy. Now, you can make a case that if there is a bad actor in that country ruling the nation, that China is doing business with that nation, but so is the rest of the world. China is always hands off when it comes to politics in another nation. They believe that it is up to the people to decide whether that government is to be there or not to be there, and it is up to the people to just get rid of that government or keep that government in place. So they will never it's not like a support, it is just doing business. Military interventions, using humanitarian or security justifications to influence regimes, like the US involvement in Latin America during the Cold War. I'm very, very sure that they did a lot of that also in Africa, especially under the guise of the war against tea, you know what comes after it, error, right? But China, as everybody knows, it doesn't do that. It doesn't do in any wars or whatsoever. So there's no such thing like that. There is a military base in Djibouti, only one. That's the only Chinese foreign military base that there is in the entire world. But it's there for a peacekeeping thing with other nations together. So yeah, there's no such thing. Cultural hegemony, media and education promoting Western cultural norms, languages, and consumerism as superior, eroding local traditions and identities. And that's also what's not happening. They are not pushing their values or traditions up on the African people. So there's no such thing. They're not trying to erode the local traditions and identities at all. That's something that is not being done. Global brands, corporations like Coca-Cola or McDonald's reshape local economies and lifestyles, creating dependency on foreign products. Also, that is not what China is doing. Obviously, a lot of brands from China will be over there, but that is because it is more affordable, etc. They're not doing what Coca-Cola or McDonald's would be doing, and that is monopolizing the market. And that's the key difference there. And that is why the local population will not be able to get in that particular part of business because it has been monopolized. China is not doing that. So it's not the same, right? Technological and digital exploitation, data colonialism, tech giants like Meta, Google extract and monetize data from developing nations, often without fair compensation or privacy protections. Yeah, that's true. Also, China isn't doing that. We are on TikTok. I don't know how they operate in Africa. I do how they operate in the West, and the data is being kept in the West. So I think that it would be the same case as for Africa. However, you must also think there is a difference between state companies and private companies, and it would not be fair to say that a private company maybe is bringing the data to its home, whether it is in the United States or America. It should be for the government to do something about it. Anyway, China gave the data initiative, I forgot the correct name, which actually will say that all the data that is being harvested in a particular country through these media, whatever it is, or other apps, should be stored in that country and should not be taken from that country to another country so other companies can, make money of that without the consent of those people. However, under pressure of the West, nobody wanted to sign that, and there you go. Yet we are saying that we have to be scared of China stealing our data, but when they come with this initiative, nobody wants to sign it. Amazing, isn't it? Digital infrastructure. Chinese companies like Huawei building 5G networks in Africa, potentially enabling surveillance or political leverage. Now, this is very interesting. It is true that Huawei is building 5G networks. It could put some pressure or political leverage. However, in the case of Huawei, that is never possible. And the reason why is because Huawei is actually teaching the Africans how to build up their own network so they will not be dependent on Huawei. That's what they do. They are sharing the technology instead of gatekeeping it and make Africa dependent on that technology. So that's totally the opposite. I think it is very interesting that they did put it there, and for political leverage, as I said, China has a non-interference policy, so there's no such thing. So there is a couple of things. There's dependency theory argues that neocolonialism perpetuates global inequality by keeping poor nations reliant on wealthy ones. Yeah, well, we're not going to do that one because we are out of time. But I hope this is quite clear that China isn't doing none of those things. And yes, it looks like they are if you do not really fully understand what neocolonialism actually is and listen too much to Western media. And, they are doing business. Yes, China does a lot of business all over the world. But that doesn't mean that they are neocolonizing you. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I couldn't finish my entire video. It's too short because I have this great letter of Premier Zhou Enlai, but yeah, we have to keep it like this. Anyway, this was your favorite half Chinese. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, and if it was educational for you, no hate man, just educational, then please like and share. And don't forget to follow. And I also have a YouTube channel, and I would highly appreciate if you would also follow me on YouTube. So I can go to bed with